September 11th. Joining us right now is Tina Fordham for a brief, geopolitical strategist, Fordham Global Foresight. Tina, we could do a 3-hour conversation with you right now. The world is so topsy-turvy, it is of shock. Are we at a point of instability, or can diplomacy and dialogue lead us to a stable outcome?
Thanks, Tom. Well, it might surprise you to hear me say it, but I actually think that the G20 meeting, for all of its kind of interesting quirks and shifts, highlights how in a topsy-turvy world, most leaders, with the notable exception of Chinese President Xi, who declined to attend, need these gatherings, and they are important. On the one hand, they're an opportunity for what I'm calling geopolitical hedging, a chance to, kind of opportunistically take sides or take part in certain aspects of agreements, like the India-Middle East transport corridor, very interesting development, and extending a seat to the African Union, which was a big India initiative. So, we used to not look at these kinds of international talking shop type of gatherings at all for their impact on global markets. And now they're a little bit of a crystal ball, I think, or maybe something more substantive.
I look, Tina, at the more substantive and where we are right now. What should be the approach of America with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 balls in the air? How do we prosecute a foreign policy, particularly with China?
Well, there's the old saying about, watching your enemy and waiting till he makes a mistake. Now, China and the United States are not enemies. We used to be frenemies, and now we're something in between. But I do believe that President Xi's kind of snub to India, as it really seems, in not attending the G20 was a strategic own goal for China, coinciding, as it happens, and I was in Asia last week talking to investors in Hong Kong, with this flurry of sort of peak China stories and a real decline in investor sentiment around China. Now, the markets always run faster than global policy. And I think the non-appearance at the G20 by President Xi is a perfect illustration of that. He really should have been there, kind of bolstering China's commitment to international negotiations.
Well, in his absence, President Biden said that the China economic crisis, and that was the word that he used, made an invasion of Taiwan less likely. Do you think that that was helpful, that that was something in the playbook of his strategists, or whether that was something more off the cuff?
Well, I think without seeing into the president's mind and knowing something about his form, Biden tends to call it as he sees it. And so if that's off the cuff, then, that is how he sees it. China economic crisis, peak China, as we more likely to hear in investor parlance. Part of that sentiment, though, right? And Biden is taking a pretty conventional wisdom view, I think, and saying if they're having economic difficulties with Country Garden and with the property bubble and other considerations, the kind of failure to launch of the post-COVID boom that was expected, they're less likely to invade. Actually, history, tells us that sometimes a decline can lead to more willingness for opportunism abroad. I think we should take Biden's comments like this, though, with a grain of salt, to be honest. I mean, more important in terms of U.S. signaling are visits from people like Gina Raimondo and Janet Yellen.
Yeah, there was also the other side of this, where China was protesting the U.S. hosting the 2026 G20. What did you make of all of the meetings, the focus on Vietnam, the focus on India? How much of that is geared toward, yes, trying to shore up allies, but also trying to shore up new manufacturing sites in a material way?
That's exactly what it was about. And in this sense, the U.S. is pushing on an open door in terms of the regional appetite in Asia for stronger partnerships, bearing in mind that President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. You could interpret these kinds of deals and the elevation of Vietnam to a stronger status as a trading partner as, kind of making up for that. So, public opinion data has always made very clear that China's neighbors fear both China and Japan. Now they fear China a bit more. And so the U.S. is in a strong position to develop these kinds of relationships. And India, I think, gets a lot of points for the way it handled the summit. And things like the communique, which analysts were concerned, or the journalists highlighted, would there be a communique? That was all about making sure that President Modi of India, Prime Minister Modi rather, didn't end up being the first leader of a G20 summit who didn't, end up producing a communique. So very interesting signaling going on as we rebalance the global system.
Tina, the president will go to Alaska today. He will not be here in New York City. He won't be in Virginia. He won't be at the events in Pennsylvania to mark the 22nd anniversary of the attacks on 9/11. Tina, I wonder what your thoughts are on the appropriate way for a president to mark an event like this one.
I think it won't be lost on people. And, like a lot of you in the audience and in the studio, I was in New York on 9/11. It's a solemn and a somber occasion, a milestone in American history that really did change the course of U.S. policy in a number of ways. Frankly, it's surprising, I think, that the president isn't there. Maybe it reflects a desire to move on, but, you guys will. What do you think? I think it's a little too early to move on.
Tina Fordham, thank you for those comments. Tina Fordham today on this September 11th. John, do the math. 22 years